Alright, we're going to head and talk about this replay real quick for Templar Assassin. So before I jump into the actual replay, I want to talk about one or two things regarding Sideblades and Refraction before we go in. You may already be aware of these, maybe you're not. I find that in these videos it can be beneficial just to reiterate some of the more nuanced things, just so everybody's on the same page when we talk about certain mechanics. So Sideblades are spill type damage, where you hit a unit and then everything behind it takes additional damage. Their damage type is pure, it goes through BKB, it also goes through ethereal, which I think is less commonly known. So if this guy in the back has a Ghost Scepter, and I am spilling onto him, he will still take damage, even though he is Ghost form. Now the way the damage is calculated is it is pure damage based on the damage that you do to the target you hit. So if the guy in the front has a lot of armor, the guy in the back won't take any damage because the guy in the front also doesn't take any damage. And it's always exactly the same. Whereas if you switch the two,
elude me not,
then the guy in the back will take a lot of damage even though he has high armor. The other thing that needs to be considered is the way that the spill, like who gets spilled on, is calculated. So if we just give myself a Dragon Lance and a Blink here, so we can see it. If I hit this guy in the back, I can spill on the guy in the front if I blink past him. So just like that. Actually, doesn't really matter where I hit, as long as when the attack lands, I'm in the right spot. So what that means for the lane is when you are trying to Sideblade an enemy hero, you can walk. So see, like that, like I was doing, I was spilling on that range creep because I was attacking and then I was walking to be in line as the projectile was flying through the air. So that's Sideblades. On Refraction, Refraction has two instances. It has absorb instances and it has damage instances. The damage and the number of instances scales with levels, and the damage reduction is always the same, where it will remove one instance of damage that is more than 5. So something like Orb of Venom will not reduce the number of instances that you have because the damage is too low, even though it might cancel like a Blink Dagger or something like that. I actually don't believe it does, but if there's a spell in the game that cancels Blink but doesn't do more than 5 damage, then that can be the case. So something else to talk about for Refraction is certain situations that are less beneficial to use Refraction. So Refraction as a damage reduction source is great versus heroes who can't burst it quickly, obviously, but heroes like Silencer, even though you would think that only really his Q can burst the Refraction, his W actually burns 2 charges. Oh, he is so it's doing less than 5. Where is an int item? So see, it goes from 12 to 10. If I hit him again, it will go to 8, then to 6, and every time it's going down by 2. And that's because his orb attack and his actual attack are both doing more than 5 damage. So heroes like this are Silencer, OD, Clinks. Huskar and Viper kind of do, but their orb attack also is a DOT, so it's kind of redundant. And you should avoid picking TA into Viper or Huskar. Now you can play those matchups, so we can talk about that in a different video, but it's obviously less ideal and it is considered to be a counter pick. Okay, so we'll get into the replay real quick. So in this game, from draft, we want to talk about when to pick Templar Assassin, when is it a good hero. So you did not last pick, which is generally not advisable because the enemy can counter you, and you simply have less information. So you want to pick TA when The enemy heroes are relatively burstable because you want to kill things quickly, and they have very low DOT. So DOT, damage over time, things like Acid Spray or Ignite from Ogre are spells that are going to make you less survivable in fights and kind of limit the moves that you can make on the map because they represent kill threat if they show up with other heroes and you don't have the correct items to deal with it. So, could you have picked TA into this game? It's fine. I don't think you should ever try to avoid picking a hero just because the support has a spell that may or may not counter your hero. Obviously, you can buy BKB or Manta or Yules, or you get the Meld Dispels versus Ignite. And Acid Spray is a very similar thing, right? They don't have like some kind of hard lockdown plus a way of bursting through fraction and killing you. So I think this is a fine TA game, even though you picked it early. The enemy team didn't really counter you. But that's something to consider. If I were to pick Templar Assassin first or second phase on my main account, I would get counterpicked every game because that's just the nature of the hero. You have to deal with her or she becomes a problem. In terms of skill build and item build, you do generally want to start with Psyblades. Certain heroes, certain matchups, you need to get Refraction in order to deal with the kind of burst damage they have. So Shadow Fiend is a great example of that, where if he gets his raises level 1, then you need to get Refraction and probably start the game with a stick. For item build, your item build is incorrect. Most mids, not every single mid, but most ranged mids, start with 2 of whatever their Slipper, Mantle, or Gauntlet is. So the Slipper of Agility, you want to start with 2 of those, a Circlet, which is this thing, a Branch, and a Fairy Fire. And ideally you get 2 Tangos from one of your supports. And as TA, you almost always want to have a high ground ward because it allows you to line up your Psyblades a lot better. So great places to ward are like over here by these trees, but somewhere where you can get to a ward and not let the enemy hero see it. Otherwise, it's fine to have it like here on your stairs. And even in some cases, like if there's a Zeus and you just want to have a rune ward, I like to get a cliff ward like this. If there's a Mirana in the game, then I'll ward whichever cliff the Mirana is in. So if she's pause 5, I'll ward this cliff. If she's pause 4, I'll ward this cliff. Just because, like, Mirana represents kill threat. So, since we missed the first wave, we'll go back and talk about it, because I always tell everyone when they're learning in mid, the first wave is the most important. And there are 2 reasons for that. One is because the first wave will dictate who gets level 2 first. And it often is when a lot of the trading and sustain battle happens. So you don't click on this guy. I know that because I watched this replay already. But you never click on him to see what kind of regen he has. And you probably have no clue at any point in the game what regen he has. This game he had no regen. He came to lane with no tangos, no salve, no branches, just 2 circlets, a gauntlet, and a coin. Now, what that should tell you is he does not want to trade. He wants to CS as safely as possible. And the last thing he wants to do is to get in a right click battle with you. And that is for 2-fold reasons. 1, because he has no regen. And 2, because you have regen. If you don't have regen, then it's equally unfavorable for you. Now, you have a little bit of regen because you have 1 tango, and you should be sending out a salve with the rune gold, and your courier's by your tier 2 right now, and I've already clicked on it and checked, and it's sending out a Slipper of Agility for some reason, which you should have already bought instead of this Blightstone, and then you don't have regen. So realistically, if this Alk is not an idiot, and he has regen, and he notices you don't have regen, you have this, he's going to want to trade with you, use his regen to get you low, and then he will salve up or tango up, and then you will be low and you won't want to fight him. Now, back to why the first wave is the most important. So the level 2 thing, the the first wave, creep wave, is exactly, like, just exactly enough XP to get you level 2, which means if any creep gets denied, then you won't get level 2 off of the first wave. Now, TA does a couple things really well in the lane. So, obviously, she harasses enemies pretty well with side blades, which is something you should be trying to do consistently. You're not just going for last hits, you're also trying to side blade people. So, the general, like, order of, or priority is you want to be last hitting, and then you want to be side blading. So, if there's not a last hit, then you should be side blading. If there is a last hit, then you should be last hitting. So it's okay to push the wave. You don't need to have good creep equilibrium. In fact, on TA, it's often advantageous to be under their tower. This is twofold, and this is one of the reasons why I feel like a lot of people are so bad at TA, is because they don't understand these simple concepts. Like, if I push the creep wave meets, I push the wave by auto-attacking, I sideblade this guy down to 300 HP, and then he has a full creep wave, like, of your allied creeps, chasing him under tower, trying to hit him, plus a hero who is now level 2, plus the fact that as the tower hits the creeps and they get low, you can spam denies on the creeps. And even if you don't actually get the deny, right, like let's say he gets the last hit or the tower does, you're making it harder for him to CS, and your side blades work off the denies, which means he's now getting side bladed. And since we talked about before in the demo, because of the way that side blades spill damage is calculated, or not calculated, but who gets spilled on, is calculated. The homing missile creeps, which are going to be running straight at him, trying to kill him with every breath and fiber of their being, means that your side blades are basically going to always land on the hero, and he has to juke really, really hard. And of course, as he is juking, you can try to predict or follow. Alright, well, I really mean mirror his movements. That way, even if he, like, let's say he runs kind of up and left, then you run down and right, and he will still get side bladed. So, that sounds like a very unfavorable matchup for the, or situation for the Alk, right? Like, he got side bladed like crazy in the wave. He's level 1. He doesn't have acid spray. You are level 2. You have refraction. So if you get hit by tower, you can pop your Q, and then you won't take damage from it. If he walks up to hit you, you get the bonus damage from your Q as well. Just a lot of good that comes from it. So these, like, kind of passive lanes on TA do not favor you. You want to be aggro, you want to be messing up the creep equilibrium, you want to be farming. It's like, you don't care if you have to CS under tower every once in a while because you have refraction, which, by the way, something that drives me crazy about this lane is how little you use your Q. It's like, you have full mana, you have this ability that basically guarantees you can't miss last hits, and yet you've missed 4 last hits. And all of them were from the second wave. Like, you only missed 1 CS in the first wave, and you missed 3 CS in the second wave, even though you had an additional 25 damage in which to last it. And you didn't double wave him under the tower. So you've kind of done, like, absolutely nothing other than let this Alk sit in lane. And even though, like, sure, technically you have 1 more last hit than him, like, he's denied 2 creeps, and he should have so little in this lane because of this matchup is really, really hard for him. You do a lot of physical damage. He has 3 armor. He has no sustain innately until he gets level 6. And he really, really wants to be able to get every single last hit them on the map. Okay, item build should generally be double Wraithband, Treads, Deso. If you need to get a stick or a wand, then you can add that to your list, but I don't get it every lane. I get it only in lanes where the enemy hero is spamming spells like Shadow Fiend, Zeus, Quap, but obviously versus heroes like Alchemist, who presses acid spray every once in a while, it just isn't a very efficient use of your gold. Even if you get the wand later because you're finding that you're living in fights or dying in fights because you're missing mana or like 1 HP or something like that, you know. Okay, so you do go to farm the side camp. I think it's odd to me the amount that you committed to this. Like, I'm glad that you prioritize the lane creeps, but I feel like you had time to do 14 more damage and get the last hit and not miss anything on the creep wave. And if you didn't, then you probably shouldn't have gone to the camp in the first place. So it's kind of odd to me. And then what's going to happen is you're not going to get back there in time. I guess there was another creep there too.
Thanks.
But you should have been able to position yourself to side blade better. Anyway, so Here, again, like, you're running around the map, you're basically full mana, you only ever seem to use your Q offensively, and I think that's an enormous mistake, because your Q is primarily an offensive ability that has defensive characteristics. So, if you think about how the scaling is on this spell, every single level, it gives you more damage and more attacks with more damage. So, the first level, it's effectively 75 total damage that it gives you, and the second, that's the first level, right? Because you get 25 bonus damage and 3 instances of it. And the second level is 200 damage, which is almost triple the damage. And that pattern continues for all levels, right? Because then you get 5 instances of 50. That's 200. Or 5 instances of 75, sorry. And 6 of 100. And so it goes from 75 total damage to 600 total bonus damage across all 4. So very, very good scaling ability. That's why you want to max it in every single situation. Basically, regardless of everything. And the damage avoidance effects are completely secondary. Like, TA would still be a good hero. Not as good, but she would still be a very strong hero without the damage avoidance things. Like, yes, you can use it in order to dodge tower attacks, but why are you using it to dodge one tower attack when you haven't even used your Tango in 4 minutes because you've been so afraid of hitting the enemy mid because he might auto you that you gave him a free lane while you gave yourself also a free lane, but you don't want to just trade free lanes. You want to be stomping this guy. TA is one of the heroes, similar to Quap, where if you're not if you're not stomping your lane, you're losing it. It's not enough to draw even. You actually have to be ahead. And that's why these kinds of mechanics and playstyles are so important, and why so many people lose game after game after game on Templar Assassin, because they're the biggest freaking pussies in the world in the laning phase, and they don't use their spells, and they don't use their HP, and they don't use their mana. It's like, you farm so fast. Like, you get this regen ring at 4 minutes. It's super lucky. I don't know how the heck it sat there for 50 seconds without either of you picking it up.
A gift from the Tempest of
but like, the sheer volume of regen that is purchased in this lane is like combined. You guys buy less regen on both you and the Alk than I buy in the first 60 seconds of the game, and that's not because I am a worse player and I go get hit by tower a lot, but it's because I am a better player and I understand that using the regen is a tool in order to let me prevent the enemy from getting anything. So, like, again, you use your damage avoidance to dodge, like, 2 ticks of damage from acid spray or something ridiculous, and, like, completely waste the damage. I don't know. Something else to talk about is item choice and order. So, you get brown boots first. You always do this. I feel like you should get gloves of haste first, because the only thing that slows you down farming-wise is your attack speed and not how quickly you get from camp to camp. A great example of that is if you're farming ancients, it takes you longer to kill the ancient camp than it did for you to walk there, or walk to the next camp. So movement speed is secondary to farming speed. Basically, movement speed is farming speed when the thing that limits you is how quickly you can get to camps. And right now, that's not the limiting factor. Something else that I want to talk about is, like, you have this glove of haste in your backpack for like 3 minutes or something crazy before you get your treads, which is kind of unacceptable. Again, you still have not used this Tango, even though you're missing, what, 600 HP, 660 HP. You still haven't used the Tango that you had 6 minutes ago, 7 minutes ago. Like, it seems like whenever somebody threatens you, you just run away and you're scared, and you don't, like, think about it as an opportunity to, like, yeah, here, even though you microed your items, and your Psyblade usage on farming camps is atrocious. Like, you're not pressing refraction, and it takes you 10 years to farm a camp that should take you like 3 hits at most. So you should probably go in the lobby and practice farming these camps, because, like, if it takes you 20 seconds to farm this, I would have farmed this in 2 seconds. I would have shoved out the wave, and then I would have farmed this in that same amount of time. And that's why, like, I will have 60 last hits at this time, nearly double what you do. And you are barely ahead of a hero that you should be dumpstering. So, Trap usage. Your trap usage is also very odd to me. I feel like you should be trapping the stairs on every single matchup, except for maybe versus a Zeus, and even then it's still good because it forces him to trade however like 120 of his mana for lightning bolt for 15 of yours. This is a nuke. It is a slow. It allows you to hit people. It gives you vision. It puts kill threat. Like 250 damage for 15 mana. There's not a better spell in the entire game in terms of mana to damage efficiency. And not to mention the fact that it allows you to just walk up and hit this Alk. And trust me, if you trap this guy once or twice, he never comes mid again. Like, he'll come mid, he'll throw out an acid spray, you'll deny every single creep. He doesn't have acid spray to farm, and he's getting stomped because he has a 20-minute item. In terms of regen, like, you finally start using your Q and your traps and spending your mana, but primarily it's because you were like getting hit by a creep, and instead of taking 5 damage, you used refraction, and it's just incorrect. Like, who cares if you take the 5 damage? You're using the Q for damage. And here, like, you trap this guy, and then you don't go hit him. It makes no sense to me. You've gotten 2 regen runes, and you used a tango. It's just way, way, way too passive. Like, you are so strong right now compared to this guy. And you're playing so scared. He shouldn't be allowed to... If he leaves this lane, you should be hitting his tower. So when he goes to jungle, you should be hitting his tower and you force him back. And whenever he comes back to defend his tower, he should get trapped into forehead and then autoed 6 times by you. And then he's like, okay, good grief, like, you can just have the tower. This is insane. And then he basically comes to the conclusion where I can only be there if I am in my ult. That's the only situation that he can be in this lane. If he's not ulted, he is not there. And a lot of times, especially these lower rank alks, like, your bounty hunter is playing correctly here and trying to piss this guy off as much as possible. But this lower rank alk, he's not going to have mana consistently because he's, not to be rude, but he's also low on MMR. And so he's also not buying regen, just like you. And so, like, he should just be getting punished for his complete lack of game knowledge and his absolutely atrocious build. But, like, nope, instead, you are both not getting farm mid, and he is farming the jungle, and he benefits a lot more from every single last hit than you do. So while it's important to get your farm and get your item timings, it's much more important that he gets no timing whatsoever. It's like, let's say your timing is 20 minutes and you delay that by 5 in order to slow him down by 10 minutes. That's like a good trade. Strength is relative, so if you're stronger than someone, it doesn't really like matter what the situation is. Like, are you stronger at him by 10 minutes or 5 minutes or 100 minutes? It doesn't really matter. It's like, you can place traps back here behind his tower. That way when he walks away from you, that he gets trapped again. It's like, it's 250 damage for 15 mana on an 11-second cooldown. And then, because you're afraid of getting tower hits for some reason, I don't fully understand why.
Radiant's middle tower is under attack.
Instead of just hitting the tower twice and getting 300 gold for a tower last hit, and then using the salve that you already bought, you just let him deny the tower. Like, what are you doing?
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
Anyway, so this is the first time, 11 minutes in, that you actually pressure the Alk in any way, and then you kind of choke the tower, and then you leave. Like, you find a DD, and your instinct is to go and farm the triangle.
Radiant are scanning.
Why not farm his triangle? Why not... Like, he just ultied. Let's go look at what he was doing while you grabbed the DD.
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
He's farming mid. No trap on him. Look at this man. He had to buy 2 sentries because he's so terrified. Even though you're not doing anything to him, he's so terrified of going mid or getting hit by this bounty that he has to do this. Like, you can just grab this DD and then you can walk at him. What is he going to do? Ulti and run away? Perfect. It's like, you don't have to dive him. That's the thing. It's like, you don't have to dive him. You don't have to kill him. You just have to run at him. Which means he doesn't get to just stack these camps passively. He doesn't get to farm. It's like, sure, whatever. You're not going to farm this small camp. But it's just kind of a shame that you... Like, all things considered, you still won mid, and then you don't do anything with this. You're so dedicated to, I can't play before I have my deso, that you're missing, like, one of your strongest moments. So, Alka's just farming. You're not even, trapping his camps. So, I would say your bounty hunter, who is putting all these sentries, is playing extraordinarily well at making sure this Alp gets nothing, and I would say you are doing nothing to make sure Alp gets nothing, and you are not going to win the farm battle. Like here, just trap him and hit him, for the love of all that is holy. Like, oh no, you might take a couple hits of damage and F this Alf. And then you TP top. To not really a fight that's happening, you wander around for a minute.
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
And then when you win the fight.
Radiant's courier has been
So like, even though you get a double kill, and maybe you're like, wow, that was really cool, I was so strong, I showed up with my death zone and got 2 kills. Like, it cost you 2 or 3 minutes of time, and the win condition, meanwhile, is farming. Like, you didn't kill the Riki, you killed 2 supports and a Slardar, Alk got the free farm, he's not getting punished. Like, these aren't even track kills, because Bounty's not here, because he's chasing this Alk around, making sure he gets nothing. And then you have to see Riki anyway. It's like, why are you using your power spike to, like, have a negative map pressure? Negative map pressure, we can talk about that, for example. So positive map pressure is forcing the enemy to do something. So here, when you walked at them, that was positive pressure. Now, it didn't work out because it was misdirected. Even if you kill them all and get this tower, like, you don't really care about this tower. It doesn't open up the map for you. So if you're going to make those rotations, make them at least on an objective that matters. If you're going to feed for something that matters. Like, I don't really care if you die 10 times in a game and you win because you're feeding in the right parts of the map, but you're feeding, like, this is the worst possible. Well, that's not the worst possible. Of all the places to die on the enemy side of the map, this is the worst one. Like, obviously the worst place in the map to die is probably next to your mid tower. So, but if you're going to die on their side of the map, which generally if you die, that's where you should be dying. Because if you're on your side of the map, you should be playing safe because there's threat. But, anyway, but I digressed a little bit. So, you should be trying to force rotations and then leaving. So, when you saw this fight top and everybody TP's in, you should just be saying either to yourself or to your team, get back, get back, get back. We don't want to have this crazy fight because it's unlikely that it favors us. And even if it does, we don't care about the end objective. So, then you're feeling scared, I guess, because you died. So you start to farm in the safest part of the map that you can find. And meanwhile, Auk is just farming up a storm, and there's no map pressure getting created. So, like, you have this enormous power spike with your Deso. You're not threatening Roche, you're not threatening tower, you're not forcing rotations. You're just hitting creeps. And that's what the enemy team wants. And TA is so good versus heroes that just want to hit creeps because she basically can solo kill anyone in the entire game for the first 30 minutes because she has 3 times as much damage as any other hero, and they can't kill her because of her fraction.
Radiant structures are Radiant's bottom tower is under attack.
And when you get your blink, you're elusive because you go to fight someone, like let's say you pressure this tower, and then they react, and you just blink into the trees and take the swords. Here you go, and I don't know why you meld.
Radiant's bottom tower is under attack.
I have no clue why you would block up the meld. Besides the fact that you were amped by Slardar so they could see you. Even if they couldn't see you, what would melding have done there? Like, you can just walk away. I don't know. So, basic concepts on TA and game flow is you want to get your deso, you want to threaten Roche or objectives. You don't really want the team fight. What you want to do is you want to go to somewhere, you want to force people to TP, and then you want to go and solo kill somebody somewhere else, right? So let's say that first fight top. You run top, you force Ricky to TP there, you force Ogre to TP there, Slardar and Techies are already there. That means if you go somewhere and you go to fight the Alchemist in his jungle, the only people that could possibly be there, assuming they TP'd, are Techies and Slardar, and you don't really care too much about those heroes. Like, Techies isn't going to kill you because he has no way of dealing with refraction. Slardar doesn't offer any damage, and you're going to kill this Alchemist so fast, they're probably not even going to be able to react. So, like, walking top, forcing a rotation, and then TPing back mid, and going and hunting the Alchemist is a really, really good, like, game plan, assuming that you can't go Roche first, which is what I would always try to do as soon as I get my Deso, especially if it's an early Deso, is try to grab somebody like Necro or Jug can both help you, but honestly, even Bounty Hunter, because he has decent armor, can go and help you, and they basically just have to deal a little bit of damage, and then in between your refraction cooldown, they can tank a hit or two just so you don't die. But again, it's like you have this salve, so you can go, it's like you'll get low, you can press refraction and salve yourself up. And then that lets you play a little more aggressively on the map. Speaking of aggression on the map, there's kind of like a bubble of safety around every hero. So, like, the bubble of safety for you versus Ogre is larger, meaning Ogre is more dangerous to be close to than somebody like Techies. It's also larger, like Ogre's bubble of safety is also, or it's really bubble of danger, sorry. Ogre's bubble of danger is larger than Slardar's or Ricky's or Alchemist's, because Ogre is the one that is going to stun you and kill your refraction. Alchemist, now that he has Radiance, is probably a bigger threat than the Ogre at this point, but for the first 16 minutes, or however long it took him to get his first item, 16 minutes, he had absolutely zero threat to you. But the fact that you have this Deso before he even has his Relic, and like then you TP top and threaten things that don't matter, trying to get kills on heroes that aren't going to win the game. Like a Slardar and a Techies are not going to win the game for them, instead of pressuring their win condition and forcing rotations. And even, like I said, I've said this like 3 times, I'm going to say it again. Like, the fact that you went up here and they TP'd is completely 100% fine. But what you did with that, like what you did with that move, was a complete waste, and even if it had worked out beautifully, it was still not the correct move. So, go top, force them to TP, you run away, you don't stay and fight, you don't try to do it, you tell your team back, back, back. If they don't listen, then you just leave yourself. There's no reason for you to stay and also feed. And then you go to this, you TP to your tower, and you go and you threaten something else. Or you TP bottom and you take a tower. Whichever floats your boat. That's probably what I would have done, which is TP bottom and take a tower. Because chasing Alk around in the woods is good, but if he has no woods to go to because all of his towers are dead at 20 minutes, then that's also good. Probably better. Going back to the bubbles of danger. Now, the bubbles of danger do not change when you get your Deso. They're still equally dangerous to you because you will either die or you won't, and no item you have is currently going to change that. Blink Dagger changes that. I'm going to go back and watch the way I can perform this camp. I'm just going to let you watch this, and I'm not going to comment on it, because I think it is fairly obvious that everything you did on this ancient camp was completely wrong.
Blessings. Dire's middle tower
That takes
is
you
under
so
attack.
long.
Radiant's bottom tower is under attack.
Why did you meld? You have to, like, remove from your head that Tia has a singular defensive ability. She has no... Every single ability she has is aggressive. Like, meld making you go invis is going to save you 1 in 100 fights, at the very most. I literally can't think of hardly any times I've ever lived because I've melded.
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
Use your trap. Use your trap. Use your trap.
Where do you think you're going?
The heck? Why didn't you use any traps?
Dire's
30%
bottom tower
slow.
is under attack.
Okay, so you gotta kill the Riki, you gotta kill the Ogre. What are you gonna do with it? So you have no mana because you don't fly out clarities
Radiant's
and you don't
bottom
tread
tower
switch.
is under attack. Radiant's bottom tower.
If you're gonna blink on him, which I think is generally a bad idea at this point because he has Radiant's ability to at least blink to get the
Radiant's
tower.
bottom tower.
It's just twice you just watched him deny a tower. They're worth a lot of gold, like 300 gold, and they get gold for denying it. Like he gets half the gold for successfully getting the deny. It's not like denying a creep where you just lose. You should. Is this a replay bug that you're burning? Yes. Okay. Targeting itemization now. So you're already behind in your timing by probably like, I don't know, 4 minutes or something like that. You got a like 13-minute deso, 14-minute deso. It took you 5 minutes to farm a blink, and then you didn't get your item for 28 minutes, and that means there's something wrong here. Like you're not farming enough, and you're not farming it correctly. So we talked about this map pressure thing. So what you don't want to do is AFK farm your own camps, if you can help it. Those are the last resort camps. These are the everything has gone wrong with the world, and I'm farming these camps. Why is that? Well, because if you farm their camps, you're effectively doubling your farm. Not just because of the additional camps that you can fall back on once you farm the enemy camps, but because if you farm their camps, that means they're not farming your camps. Or sorry, that means they're not farming their camps. So again, if you get a last hit, and Alchemist gets a last hit, who wins the gold battle? Well, Alchemist does because he gets more gold. However, if you get a last hit on his side of the map and he gets no last hits, then all of a sudden that one last hit, even though you didn't change how many last hits you got just because of which one it was, swung the gold lead in your favor. And having gold allows you to buy items which allow you to deal with things like Ogre or Alk or Slardar or whoever. Pretty sure you choke your melt hit here. Nope, you don't. You actually choke a bunch of them later. Then here you see this BKB, and like for some unknown reason you're manning up, and then you were walking down the river instead of away from it. It's a replay button, isn't it? Why are you not just walking either to your tower or up? And if you're gonna meld in front of an Alk who's channeling his stun, you should probably wait for him to stun himself. So BQ was gonna end, and he would stun himself while you waited for meld. And they had no sentries anywhere near you. So you probably could have killed him if you had just stayed melded, because you would have stunned himself for
Dire's middle tower is under attack.
360 damage. And then he
Dire's
would have
middle
gotten
tower
melded in the
has
face.
fallen.
Like you could have lived, or you could have killed him, and you kind of did nothing.
Dire's middle
You
tower
just, like,
is under attack.
walked in a weird direction. Oh, you got a mango tree. So yeah, there's no reason for you ever to be dying on 23 mana when you have a mango tree.
Dire's structures are fortified.
Because you should be full mana at all points in the entire game, except for in between pressing refraction. You are at least looking around the map, which I think is good. Okay, itemization. So let's think about this real quick, because you queue up an Orchid, and that's end up what you get in. Who are you buying Orchid for? Techies, Slardar, Ogre, Alk, Ricky. Which one of them is getting Orchid? We'll talk about this fight in 1 second because this is a good fight to talk about. But I don't understand the Orchid. They don't have a Zeus, they don't have an Invoker, they don't have like a Void Spirit, they have no elusive heroes that are like spell casting mobility heroes like a Storm Spirit. So the Orchid is like going to prevent Ogre from casting the spells. And then you'll get counter initiated on by a Slardar. Great example is this fight. Let's assume you had Orchid because you were farming so much more efficiently and you had items at the right timings. Let's look at this fight from the perspective of if you had an Orchid. No, you don't.
Radiant's bottom tower is
So
under
your
attack.
camera placement, a lot of times, I haven't really talked about this too much because I don't want to go too nitty gritty, but your camera placement, it's like you're farming this camp and like look at how much information you're wasting because you're just like kind of focused on this camp. Why is your camera not here, like down, where this fight is going on? Like you can see it on the minimap, and you don't need to be looking at camps when you hit except to line up side blades, but that should be pretty simple and second nature. But then it takes you like so long to see this fight. And then your instant reaction is to blink on a hero that doesn't matter. To miss your meld. And then never press trap. And now you're not pressing it here because you're silenced. Why didn't you trap before you went in? And then waited a second to see what would happen. And then landed your meld strike. And then here, you still have trap ready to go. You finally use it. You see the Ogre, which is like the one hero who threatens you +1. You blink directly on him. Now, assuming you had an Orchid here, it would have been a better fight because you could have at least silenced the Ogre in this instance. Breaks all of your refraction. And then, surprise, surprise, the enemy team counter initiates. And then you stand in the smoke cloud and you die. None of this time. So, from that, is Orchid the right item? The only situation that it would have been useful was blinking on top of an Ogre and then getting counter initiated by all of the other heroes. So, yes, you would not have gotten stunned. You would not have had him ignite you. But if you have a BKB, then you can take that fight. You don't care if you get stunned because your team is killing them. And then you can BKB when they come to fight you with their other heroes. And then you're standing in cloud and you're not missing 60% of your hits plus the 17% of the hits that miss targets because of the Radiance. And you can actually dish damage. You have an enormous evasion issue this game. You have Radiance to deal with. You have Slaughter eventually building a halberd. And you have Cloud. And your items should either be MKB, Rapier, or BKB. Obviously, I think Rapier is a bad item for this state of the game because you guys are behind. I think MKB is a good item, and if you were ahead and you had an MKB like 3 minutes ago or something, then it would have been fine, and then you could be working towards a BKB now. But at this state of the game, you need a BKB because you can't get stunned and you cannot get clouded and smoked. You have to be able to fight in kind of a group aspect because you're not strong enough to go and pick across the map anymore and to pressure objectives reasonably because you didn't do that earlier, so now they are strong. And so you need a BKB in order to actually stand and fight, which is kind of what the situation is right now. And the game is basically over at this point. We can skim through a couple other things, talk about how to approach fights. TA in team fights, which ideally you never take team fights on TA ever. But TA is a -1 hero. There are a lot of -1 heroes out there. We can talk about some other examples, but I'll explain what a -1 hero is, which is TA picks a hero and that hero dies. So you get to pick who you feel like the most important target is for you. It's obviously not techies ever. I have no clue why you would ever want to blink on a techies and try to kill him. But other heroes to consider are the Riki, the Alchemist, and the Slardar, the cores. Now, if there's a support that's just completely cucking your game, for example, my least favorite hero in the game is Lion, and let's say every time you blink on the Slardar, you just get hexed by Lion, and all of a sudden you have to blink on Lion, and you have to press BKB and kill him, because every time you go on somebody else, then he just hexes you, or whatever, right? So that maybe is the most important hero, but you need to itemize in order to pick whatever hero is the most influential to you, and you need to be able to kill him every fight immediately. So let's say it's Alk, and you need to get MKB, BKB dataless. That way you can two-shot this guy, so he doesn't have a chance to regen. Then that's the item you have to do, and that's the way you have to play, is I need to be focusing Alk. So your target acquisition should be decided in the game. There's no general rule if you need to kill the strongest hero first. It's like you want to kill whoever the heck is... You want to itemize in order to kill the person that you need to kill, and then you need to jump the person that you can actually kill. So if the only person you can kill in a team fight is techies, well, you probably shouldn't be at the team fight at all, but hypothetically speaking, then you should jump the techies and you should -1, and then it's a 5v4 immediately. Other examples of -1 heroes are like Doom, where he blinks and dooms whatever the most important hero is, or Slark, who goes and -1s a support, and then he circles back with full HP after regenerating the trees for a few seconds, and then he -1s another support, and then a core, and then a core, and then a core. And that's kind of his idea. Like Phantom Assassin, same thing. She wants to one-shot somebody with Dagger plus Blink Strike so fast that nobody can react, and then she gets to move on to the next target. That's why Aghanims on her feels so strong right now, is because it just lets her one-shot a hero and then jump to the next hero, and then one-shot them and jump to the next. And then by the time she's no longer one-shotting heroes, she no longer needs the additional spells. So, as awful as this game seems so far, it is still reasonably playable, even though your Orchid is in your backpack for what feels like 2 minutes again. You get the best TIA item in the game, which is Orbit Destruction. Oh no, Slaughter gets it. Mindbreaker's probably... Here again, like, what is actually stopping you from killing things? It has nothing to do with enemy spells. Or it has nothing to do with one person's individual spell. It has everything to do with their combined toolkit. And BKB allows you to deal with their combined toolkit, which is everybody stands in the cloud next to Alpha and they take damage. Somehow as Alpha walks up, he's like an idiot. Should have a TP and a base. Here, like, we can talk about this jump on Slaughter, because I think it was a fine jump that you just messed up.
Radiant are scanning.
Okay, so the way that you messed this up is by not attack walking. So attack walking, there is a thing called backswing. Every hero has it. Also, you're not pressing your Q off cooldown. So you can go look at how much damage you took because you didn't press Q. If you were just spamming your Q like a good TA, and then you wouldn't have taken that damage, and you might have even killed him because you would have been alive more. Also, if you had a BKB, you wouldn't miss level 6 or an MKB. So, attack walking, we'll talk about that in a second, since it's important on every ranged hero, particularly heroes like Drow, who attack walk very, very well, and tend to... the difference between a good Drow and a bad Drow is, honestly, generally how much they can position and attack walk in fights. So, you have a backswing on your attack. You animate your attack, your projectile leaves your hands, and then there is backswing. And the backswing is the animation finishing to make it look smooth. That's why a lot of heroes, especially older heroes like Drow, when they get incredibly high attack speed, they look so jerky. And it's because their backswing is getting cancelled by their next attack. And we're going to stop here because there's nothing left to watch.
To blur the line.
We'll talk about this. So we can look at Drow. and talk about attack walking.
Beware the bite of frost.
So if I buy a shit ton of moon shards here, you will see what I'm talking about by how jerky
Prepare
it
for
looks.
battle.
So if we look at
Onward.
this, you see how she like jerks, like it's kind of smooth, and then she jerks right at the end
Very well.
after
First
every attack,
blood.
and that is
And a
because of
point well
the
taken.
backswing getting cancelled by the next attack coming through so quickly.
Silent
So
as mist.
now normally you don't have 6 moon shards to demonstrate backswing, but attack walking
My
is
time has come.
as soon as your projectile leaves,
My
you walk
bow's
towards the
drawn.
enemy. And it takes a little bit of a feel for it,
Forward.
and you kind of have to have a
Now
good
that
idea of
you're
your attack
dead,
speed, but since you're
I
hitting creeps so
find it
much
easy
and
to
heroes and
respect
stuff,
you.
you kind of have some clue of what your attack speed is.
Yes.
And this does 2 things. One, it lets you walk in between your attacks. So she attacks every 1.4 seconds currently,
Battle.
which means I have 1.4 seconds to walk in between each attack without losing any damage. Now, you're not always going to be perfect at it, and the faster your attack speed is, the harder it is to
Arrow.
do.
Find your target.
But the other thing is, it just lets you chase that person. So when you were chasing that Slardar, since you didn't attack walk very effectively,
sentiments as
you got
well.
away with like 20 HP or something because you couldn't reach that last hit. Whereas if you had walked forward like once in any of those hits,
I go in
you would have died.
silence.
And then that changes the whole fight immensely. So these kinds of things, even though they seem petty and I'm just like kind of nitpicking your playstyle, like they add up, right? Like that's a perfect example of how you lost the fight because you didn't do something as simple as attack walk. In the laning phase, we talked about like not drawing aggro and not pushing the wave and all of these other things, and it's like it has a huge impact in the long run because Alp gets an extra 10 CS on the first 5 minutes that he should never get. Regen, all these kinds of things, they add up over the course of an entire game, and all of a sudden you are playing TA.
Unseen and
Where is it? Yeah, you're playing TA, and instead of, despite the fact that you have an incredibly great beginning, you end the game with 407 GPM, which is kind of absurdly low. Like, win or lose, you should have 600 GPM or higher. And that's not because you're just AFK hitting creeps. It's because of the way that you're playing the game. Like, you don't get 600 GPM sitting in your triangle for 40 minutes. You get 600 GPM because you're running around the map, pressuring heroes, and you get to farm the entire time you're doing it. Excuse me. You get to farm all of the waves of you pushing waves and forcing objectives and forcing rotations, and then getting out and going somewhere else and actually getting an objective. You get it by not watching an alchemist deny 2 towers in front of you because you didn't want to tank 1 tower hit, even though you had an entire salve in your inventory that you were never going to use for the rest of the game. A lot of these things, like being good at Dota, is being good at a lot of little tiny things that add up. And we're going to end the video here because I'm just going to get into a rant about it.